I've just made a short little visit to the satellite town of Sredny-Uralsk, located only about 15 kilometers from Yekaterinburg, and rather surprisingly for such a small town, they seem to have a seriously interesting palace of culture. Let's go check it out. This does appear to be a most unusual one. By the way, what a view you get from the back of it as well. So it's pretty cool on the inside as expected. It's had a bit of a renovation it seems, but it still manages to retain some of its original character, which is good. Those curving staircases both sides are most unusual. Behind me is a fantastic example of Soviet modernism from the late 60s. Classic from the time, lots of glass, concrete as well. If you wonder why I'm walking away from it, it's because the entrance is actually on the lower section, so I've got to go there. Don't worry, we are going to check out inside. The coats are not escaping. They're in the coat prison. So they've got these huge round mirrors here for you to see if you're looking good or not. I'm probably not. This is seriously cool inside here. I like this, really light and spacious and airy. Fantastic. The main hall's pretty big as well. So seeing the curtain there reminds me, it's not actually technically speaking a palace of culture, it's a palace of folk art. But to all intents and purposes, it's exactly the same thing. So I don't know about you guys, but I really like that. I mean, it's an absolute classic from the time. I mean, it reeks the 1960s, but that's fine by me. It's probably my favourite era of Soviet architecture. Again, this bad boy behind me isn't actually called a Palace of Culture, it's called the House of Folk Arts, but it's the same thing. For starters, there's some seriously cool stuff on the outside. Look at all these little medals. It's kind of unusual. So the Palace of Culture was built in the late 70s, but it feels really modern and spacious. As I suspected, it was originally a palace of culture, or actually more of a home of culture. There's two types, a home or a palace, and basically the only difference was that the palaces were generally much bigger. Now, once upon a time, the culture palace behind me probably would have been really cool. However, like a lot of them these days, they've been renovated and quite often they lose their original character, this one being a case in point. But on the outside, there's still a couple of cool things commemorating the Soviet space era. Now the facade is decorated with a really cool bas-relief from the early 70s. Okay, it's simple, but sometimes the coolest things can just be simple. You see the fashion these days of putting in these mirrored, blacked out windows and the tiles on the building, it does mean it loses quite a lot of its original character. So this culture palace, named after Kalinin, it's been renovated and they've put in the sort of the dark windows, and it's lost quite a bit of its Soviet charm, but as you can see, at least they've kept the cool artwork at the top. The railings outside are kind of cool though. They've got engravings of some of the activities you could do, like dancing and filmmaking. Actually, I just noticed this row of hammers and sickles, if you look. That's another cool thing about coming to the culture palaces or anywhere else. Even if the palace itself isn't interesting, which most of the time it is, but if it isn't, the things around it can be. And it's exactly the same with the Lenin statues. Often, even if the Lenin statue itself isn't that interesting, it's in a place which is interesting. I've seen loads of these, but I don't think I've ever seen one quite like that, with the rows of columns going from front to back. Most unusual. Just look at the size of the two vases that are right next to it. One there, one the other side for symmetry. You see, the new windows completely spoil the appearance, unfortunately, which is a shame, because as you can imagine before, it would have looked immense. In fact, it did look immense. So the workers would work in the factory in the background there, and then come to the culture palace in the evening. The culture palace is closed for renovation, so unfortunately we can't look inside. However, during my visit here 7 years ago, that's exactly what I did, and I took some photos. I think it's fair to say that this Palace of Culture, which was built for the tractor workers of a nearby factory, it's not really inspiring from the outside, is it? However, do not judge a sausage by its skin, because inside it is seriously interesting. This sign saying in 1941 that volunteers from the tractor factory went to help defend Moscow, so that obviously suggests that this building was built before then, i.e. in the 1930s probably. I've never ever seen this in a Palace of Culture anywhere, a slope like this. Wow, this is cool. Wow, really cool. Bit dark though. Wooden doors everywhere, wooden banister railings. I mean, this is a seriously cool piece of architecture, it really is. Downstairs as well. Looks like they're selling some clothes and hats, and then of course, look at that. Piece de resistance, even a bust of Lenin. So they're going to have one of these slope things the other side as well. Like I said, I've never ever seen these in any palace of culture anywhere. So you can see their artwork celebrating the workers of the tractor factory. So you see, that's why you shouldn't judge a book by its cover. From the outside, it didn't look anything interesting at all, did it? In fact, you might have been tempted to not even bother going inside, but it was full of surprises once you got inside.